Theodore Shapiro, double Emmy nominee for your music on Severance. And this is a reunion for you and Ben Stiller. You guys go way back. So what was it like working with Ben on a series as opposed to a film?
Yeah, well, one of the things that was just amazing about the experience is that Ben has just this remarkable ability to just keep a massive amount in his head at one time. And so, because I don't work on a ton of series, the scope of it is so is so tremendous, and it's with a feature you can watch what you've done at a screening and get a sense of like, oh, okay, this is working over this 2-hour span. With 9 episodes, you have to put yourself in the hands of your showrunner a little bit more, and so I was fortunate to be working with somebody who I trust so much to sort of guide us through as far as the large scale scope of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about the theme first because it's so simple yet haunting, and it's just a couple of piano notes. And I know that it was originally part of a larger piece that you had written, but then had zeroed in on that specific section. So I guess what was that original piece, and did you have conversations about him of like why he liked that part so much?
So the first thing that we talked about after I read the script was, let's try to do something that plays on a dichotomy between the innie world and the outie world. Maybe we'll do something electronic for the, cold and electronic for the innie world, and something warmer and more organic for the outie world. And so I had written this electronic piece, and it had this sort of section in the middle. And when I flew to New York to meet with him and look at the sets and the lookbook, and before they started shooting, and we listened to some of the stuff that I'd been writing, just sort of exploratory pieces, and he kind of kept fast forwarding to this section in the middle, and it had this kind of cool chord progression, and I just thought, like, I should do something more with this. Like, he's clearly interested in this idea. And when I got back home to LA, I kind of went straight to the piano, and I sat down and I put my hands on that chord progression and started playing it sort of exactly in the manner of the beginning of the main title. And it was just this big eureka moment, because it was like, oh, okay, so this could be just the palette of the whole show. Like, it's not about a dichotomy between innies and outies at all. It's about presenting the whole show as a puzzle or a mystery, which is really what it is. And so I sent it to Ben very, very hopefully, like a 2.5-minute version of it. And it was crickets. I heard nothing for like weeks and weeks. And I was like, oh man, like I really thought I was onto something there, but I guess not. And then like finally he called, he's like, this is great. Like, I love this. Like, this is really exciting. So from there, we trimmed the 2.5-minute version down to about 1.5 minutes, and that became the main title.
He ghosted you.
He totally ghosted me, and it was weird because he'd been very, very prompt up until that point. He'd been responding pretty quickly.
He just got lost in his email, probably. So.
Or something, or whatever. He got busy, but
yeah.
But anyway.
Well, I also love like the second half of the theme, because it becomes a little bit more like warped and glitchy. So how did you go about manipulating the audio, I guess? Or I don't know. I mean, what did you do to achieve that sound?
Well, so I think you're talking about the end of the cue where it has that sort of very glitchy effect. Well, so that sound is actually just a piano note. And what I've done is it's a reversed piano note, so it gets louder as it proceeds, and then cuts off sharply. And then as it goes, I'm adding distortion to it and then chopping out little tiny snippets of audio randomly, so it has this sort of stuttery, glitchy effect. And I just sort of thought that that could be an interesting, because the whole theme is on a piano, I just felt like having it glitch out could be somehow representative of the idea of the sort of fraying of the self. And so, we did that with the theme, and then of course it ended up getting incorporated into the score as the season progressed.
Right. Well, one thing I found so interesting with the score was the progression of it throughout the season, because at the beginning it's very economical and sparse, and then becomes more propulsive. And then by the finale, which is your nominated episode, it's just music everywhere. I don't even know if there's a scene without music. So
there's not.
To that decision to just have the score all over the place.
So at a certain point, I was talking to Jeff Richman, the editor, and we just had this notion of like, what if the last episode is not just wall-to-wall music, but really feels like one unbroken cue. And so with that in mind, I wrote a tremendous amount of music before I'd seen the episodes, kind of all in the same tempo, but then doing different things, sometimes halftime, sometimes double time, sometimes going into 3/4 time. And then, so that there would be this ability to kind of stay in the same tempo and with the same propulsive feeling, but then just take it to a lot of different places. And then, and Jeff is so good at cutting with music. I mean, he was a total partner in this whole process. And so, between Jeff and the music editors sort of helping to weave things together, and then writing, and then writing original stuff, we were able to sort of make this tapestry that I think hopefully feels like one piece of music, but that is in fact a bunch of things stitched together.
I mean, it also has to culminate at the ending sequence, when it's just cutting back and forth between all those different settings. So what was that, working on that part, stressful between just like working with Jeff and the editing and just finding the right, I guess, peaks for the music? Yeah, no,
some of that was built into what I pre-wrote, but then some of it, particularly the very end, it felt like it needed more weight as we were working on it. And so, we had a good foundation from what was there at the start. And then I was able to just sort of build on that and enhance it to get it to the size where it needed to be eventually.
Was there ever a discussion of maybe pulling back on the music in that episode? Like, did you guys ever say like, maybe this is too much?
No, that was the plan and we ran with it. And I think that at a certain point it can be more jarring, if you're writing almost through an episode and then the music cuts out and then comes back shortly thereafter, it's almost more jarring than if you stay in. And so at a certain point, I think if you're through composing, there's a merit to just staying in.
I also think by that point, you're so invested in the story that sometimes you don't even notice that the music
absolutely. And one of the things that we talked about from the beginning was that we were going to be willing to be radically simple with the score in that episode. Like sometimes it would break down to just this sort of propulsive, kind of loop that sits below dialogue, and and the music's not doing that much, but just sort of keeping the momentum going. And that was definitely part of the conception from the beginning, was like a willingness to be radically simple with it.
Well, you mentioned you wrote a lot of music beforehand, so how much of that was actually in the final product?
Of that episode?
Or just the whole season?
Oh, the whole season. It was an absolute combination. I probably wrote over an hour of music before we started. And so, because Ben and Jeff, the editor, were so good with music, a lot of times episodes would come to me and a lot of things were, already had very good ideas in place for music. And so then there were places that needed to be written fresh. And so it was just always a combination of, attacking the places that needed a fresh idea and, refining the things where they had tracked it in and just sort of using that kind of a team process.
Mm-hmm. So have you written anything for season 2 yet? Writing ahead?
I'm starting right now. And it's funny. I mean, it's a little bit of a terrifying process because, we've defined this sound that feels like the show. And so you want to stay true to that, but you also don't want it to feel repetitious. And so I'm just trying to find ways to expand the language and maybe take the harmonic progression to new places or reorder it, or just find ways to keep it evolving without betraying what got us here in the first place.
I'm sure you'll figure it out. So
I'm glad you're confident.
Well, Theodore, it's great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time.